Really know when. Welcome, good morning. It is in fact still morning, and it's time for Who Makes the News?
Yeah.
Live online. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are joining us or joining us later on our Mixcloud account, on Femtalk 89 FM, or on the archived version of this video.
Much appreciated.
And I'm here with Alicia.
Hi.
I'm Sean, and we're going to be talking about who made the news today.
Yes. Well, who makes the news? You guys know what Who Makes the News is by now, right? So do I have to explain it?
Yeah,
might as well. Okay, so basically Who Makes the News is when we go through the papers, any online kind of media that we see, or information about stuff that's happening and it hasn't made media yet. And we just talk about it, basically, and analyze it from what we call a gender perspective, basically asking the question, where are the women? How does this respond to women's needs in local communities across Fiji? So that's basically it.
Yep. And so we have two main stories today.
Yep, two. The first one, who made the news today, is the Assistant Minister for many, many things. Industry, Trade and Tourism, Environment, I believe, Minister Lorna Eden. And basically she is quoted talking about the opening of a new government office in the north, all about kind of providing government service to local citizens.
That's good.
Yeah, so she says that, the important part of services is to make sure that it is accessible to the people so that they can use, the services that the government departments offer, which is, what we always talk about, accessibility to services, information, many, many things is very, very important and very missing in the lives of a lot of our network members across the country. So it's good to see that she's kind of with it.
Yeah, that's good.
But a little bit worrying is that she only talks about later on in the article, basically the bottom line is economics, the value of economics, the whole providing services is to ensure that there is overall growth in terms of the GDP.
Yeah.
So it kind of really doesn't pay attention to other indicators and the other, so maybe like the welfare of people in the north. So how secure do they feel when it comes to, she also talks about road upgrades and other kind of improvements to infrastructure in the north, but how does that, make people feel? Not so much about them getting, money in terms of access to markets and that kind of thing, but that sense of security, the intangible sort of indicators of stability, growth, that kind of thing. So yeah, when it comes to that, she's the only person sort of quoted in the article, so it is one-sided. It's a bit biased. No wider understanding of the issue.
And GDP is also kind of a funny thing because the way that we understand GDP is you basically don't understand it if you're the average person. It's just this kind of number.
Yeah.
And then also the way that GDP appears can also be manipulated as well. So how do we really understand growth? But also, is the growth even? Is it evenly distributed in terms of economic growth? Because as we've seen, we've unfortunately have a continually widening gap of economic standing. So, the situation where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because of the changes in the economy, prices might go up and they might say, oh, well, GDP is going up, so everything will be fine. But still, the poorest of the poor cannot actually afford to live lives where they have access not only to services and goods, but also a sense of dignity. So that's also a big thing. And not only can wealth be this magical number, but how also do we understand the distribution of wealth, not even just between the rich or the poor, but also across our geographical locations. I mean, the North is very much lacking in terms of development, in terms of economic opportunity. Some people end up coming to the capital where there might be more chance for economic opportunity, but people just generally don't want to have to move. But unfortunately, that's become a reality for many. And then when you have all the people come to the capital, it's not making the situation any better. So, while we might see the number in terms of our gross domestic product go up, how are we making sure that this development means that everybody is getting development and everybody continues to be able to continue their lives and pursue what they want to do, not just pursue things that'll support, their families and their communities.
Yeah, I get what you're referencing.
I'm referencing the fact that, I don't know, there was somebody out of the education ministry that told students, it doesn't matter what makes you happy, you need to get jobs. Instead of promoting innovation for pursuing your passions and ideas and being able to support yourself by doing that. So that's also really kind of interesting to see what the government rhetoric is at the moment. It is very economically centered, but again, we're not breaking down the economics in terms of understanding it at a really basic level. And we already have a 15% pass rate in terms of math. So how are people actually understanding half of these numbers, you know, particularly young people that'll have to take up the responsibilities of leadership and whatever the situation that's been left behind for them after our current leaders step down, whenever that might be.
Yeah.
What else is in the news today?
Well, there was a couple of two interesting articles on the same topic, on the same story, with also what I'd like to call footnote article at the bottom of the paper of the Fiji Times. And basically it's about the Fiji Community Development Project, which is it's an Australian-funded program. And it's talking about how CSOs can better utilize different media strategies in terms of raising awareness of their success stories and the projects that they have going on around the country. But it was, again, one-sided. They're only speaking to the consultant for the project. And what they didn't talk about was how can you use the media in terms of kind of promoting your organization and the work that you're doing in terms of it making a difference when certain journalistic practices are gender blind, for example. I mean, we've seen in the mainstream media when they've come to cover our own events that it is not gender responsive or gender inclusive as well. So that was interesting.
Yeah, there really needs to, we really need to figure out a way. I mean, Family Pacific as a civil society, or like a member of civil society, a non-governmental organization, but also a media organization as well. We obviously have a very particular bias. So, you know, biases aren't necessarily negative, and it's good to have diverse media. But unfortunately, a lot of the mainstream media is very saturated with business, is very saturated with the cut and dry, very basic facts, but also very saturated with a lot of press release type stories. So balance is not quite there. There's a lot of pressure on newsrooms to get stories out at a particular time. So they're unfortunately subsequently part of the 24-hour news cycle. But again, journalists aren't thinking about a number of things. They aren't thinking about gender dynamics. We often see a lot of misgendering, even following training in July.
I think July.
Training in July before it, whenever the training was, it was before the Free and Equal campaign was launched in the Pacific. So the Free and Equal campaign around promoting and supporting persons of diverse sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. So you've got the LGBTIQ community. But whenever the LGBTIQ community make the news, they're misgendered, they are not very well represented, or they're still very much invisible. Including, and then it's the same situation is for women, where women are described as mothers, not as human beings. In a recent story where the Assistant Minister for Health was talking, I think it was an Australian organization that's given prosthesis breasts, so fake boob inserts for women who've undergone mastectomy when you have your breast removed, as well as bras for persons who have had mastectomies, particularly women, but men can get breast cancer too.
Did you know that?
Yeah. Well, I did. Well, now you do now. It's important to always check your chesticles. But the way that her message was crafted was that we can't have children lose their mothers, or fathers and husbands have to take on a dual role overnight. We're not talking about a woman's right to bodily integrity, because that at the basis is the problem that we have, why women don't go to get their breasts checked, because they're scared and they don't know about looking after their bodies. That's never been a priority when you're raised, for the most part, you know, you're told, you know, that's fine. You know, we don't really talk about boobs. Boobs are shameful. That's why you have to hide them. You got to pull down your jiggle bits. For example, oh, you know, your downstairs as a woman is dirty, that's why you get your period, and that's kind of gross, you know. So even pap smears have a weird societal like taboo around them. Like, they're really uncomfortable. Like, even myself with access to education, all that kind of stuff, it's still kind of weird. I don't want to have to go for a pap smear because everyone's going to be looking at me. And then they're going to be like, you know, they're going to be wondering about what is your sexual activity status kind of thing. And so there's a weird ownership of women's bodies that we're not talking about, because we've heard stories of women dying from breast cancer because their husband said no. And so, yes, of course, we need to target men as well, particularly as partners, to support, you know, their partners and their wives to go and have their bodies looked at. But at the end of the day, if you as an individual don't feel like your body's a priority, then you're not going to look after it or not go to the doctor and other things like that. But then there's also the fact that we, you know, the current message is early detection, but we don't have radiation therapy available, which is the most typical treatment after early detection. So that's another issue.
Seems like they're saying the right things, but they haven't got the stuff to back up what they're saying.
So I mean, it's all well and good, but again, they need to be thinking about and talking about things in a way that it suits the situation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did they say anything about trying to get access to radiation? No.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, we're in a really interesting health situation where, for example, to get a CT scan, there's only one machine in the country. That sometimes goes down. So when the CT machine goes down, everybody's stuck until they fix it again. That's been an issue for a number of people. I mean, my family as well. And even with the private hospital being available, the only difference is you might get a bump in priority in getting to the CT machine, but then you also have to pay for it, even though it's always there. So there's a lot of things, and it'll be really interesting because Pink October is next month, and then we go into November, which some people have as No Shave November, and in awareness of men's cancers as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what the media coverage is like, because unless we're talking about those realities and the Ministry of Health is taking into account those realities and responding to them, then it's you got a mismatch there.
Yeah, so that's all that I thought was interesting in the paper. Tomorrow is Friday.
Tomorrow is Friday. No classes.
No. So it'll be interesting. Like for next week, I mean, the end of this week, there'll be an interesting thing happening. And we talked about yesterday, the schools not having classes, but talking about suicide.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes.
Ministry of Education has said that they will be using prefects to identify vulnerable students. Whether the prefects have the skills to identify the vulnerable students, or whether the vulnerable students will feel comfortable going or rather being identified by their prefects, has not been something discussed as of yet. We have been trying to reach out to Youth Champs for Mental Health, which is doing a lot of advocacy and community work around the issue, and have been for some time. They will be very busy tomorrow, so our CSO space will not be featuring them this week, but they will be hopefully coming on Femtalk 89 FM here in Suva between 11 and 3 next Friday.
Yeah.
So yes, follow us on Facebook to get updates around that if that's what you're into. But also on our Facebook page, we have a whole bunch of things out already. We have a report from our peace vigils held around the country, our interfaith peace vigils yesterday.
Yes.
Also, any of our podcast links or other information is also available on our Facebook page.
Yeah. And if you do have any questions about what you've heard today, you can always email us on info@feminpacific.org.fj, or you can call us, talk to us on 3318160. Get in touch.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today, and we shall see you later.
Bye.